Over to you, my brother.
All right, if we're ready, then I'm ready, and you got me good and loud and clear, correct?
100%.
All right, well, here we go then. Thank you very much, Dina. 142 out of 147. That may seem like kind of a random number to most of you on this call, but that was an imperative number for me early in my life. That's where I graduated in high school. I was 142 out of 147 in my class. So clearly, college was not going to be on my runway, and that was okay. It was a little bit of a challenge because I watched my father graduate from college at the age of 12 when I was 12 years old. So there was a big emphasis on that. But I had always wanted to own my own business, even since the time of about 14 or 15 years old. And so I didn't know what that meant. And so I went on and my dad said, "So what are you going to do?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm going to be a carpenter." And he said, "Oh, okay. Well, that's an honorable job. Go out and figure it out." So I went out, started walking job sites and asked people if I could have a job. Finally, a guy said, "Yes, you can. You can be a worker on this job site, but you're going to be a grunt and you will be just hauling lumber and doing stuff like that." Well, that sounds great in one aspect, but it's in Central Texas. So it's 100 degrees every day. You're rolling out, your compressors and everything at 6 a.m. to get ahead of the sun because it's going to be extremely hot. And it was a very challenging job. Well, part of the other part of the problem is that the guys like to do a lot of drugs, so they did a lot of cocaine and marijuana. That was not in my wheelhouse. So I was kind of like, huh, this is not very good. But really what capped it off was that my father, I come home one day, he's like, "You got to get a new job. This is crazy, a real job." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "These guys are bouncing your checks." Well, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but I'm cashing the checks in my parents' bank. Well, they're getting popped with charges and everything every other, the following week. So he's livid. So I took my dad's advice and I went out and I started applying for jobs. Well, back then, this was 1981. So I had to go physically to a place, something people on this call may not understand, and fill out an application. You'd have to dress up a little nice and, even if you're just getting a basic job. So I waited around doing that and finally got a call from Mr. Zimmerman. And back then you had to actually answer your phone at home. And I happened to be there. And he said, "Larry, come in and talk to me. I want to see about, giving you a review or an interview." So I go up and I walk into this office and he's dressed in a suit and tie and smoke coming out of the office, big old ashtray, smokes and smoke everywhere. Even his fingers were stained and he goes, "Stan, let's talk about this." So he ultimately gave me a job. And it was a yard dog. And that's where this story begins really. And that was my first real job, what do we call from a 9 to 5 job. So I take the job and I'm basically a human forklift. Again, in Texas, the asphalt out there is so hot. Back then, your shoes would stick to the asphalt if you stood there for any amount of time. It was crazy how difficult it was of a job. But I got to get a reputation because I was the guy that would go out on deliveries and help them load stuff. Well, when we go out, I would notice off in the parking lot, there were people going into this other building. This was in an actual lumber yard back before Lowe's and Home Depot. And so I started noticing they were dressing differently. Well, I come back and just happen to be paying attention, and there's a job posting for a stocker on the retail floor. So I applied for that job. And guess who's the guy that lets you get the job? Mr. Zimmerman. And he was so happy to see me, smoke-filled room again. And that's where it started. And so I get up there, I start having my job. Within a couple of days, I am pushing a cart of inventory through the main floor, and up comes the stairs is Mr. Merritt. Well, Mr. Merritt owns Stripling Blake. This is a 350 employee company, and it's just me and him, 35,000 square feet, mano a mano. I don't know what to do. I'm kind of freaked out. I know who he is. There's no way he knows who. And he looks at me with the biggest smile on his face, suit and tie. And he goes, "Good morning, Larry." And I'm like, "Good morning, Mr. Merritt." Well, that was the next step for me to kind of put, a little bit of wind under my wings. I was like, all of a sudden, like, "Oh my gosh, the owner of the company knows me," and I'll never forget that smile of this man, that just had no reason to talk to me whatsoever, but he took the moment. And that was the first time I realized it's important to have empathy, speak to everyone, and to just know people's names. And it just meant so much to me. So I got a little bit of motivation. So they started saying, "Hey, Larry, when you have time, read labels." on the back of product. Well, people didn't, you think about it now, we just go to Lowe's, they pull up on their phone. Well, back then you didn't have that chat GPT. You had to physically understand the products that you were selling. So I started learning that. They put me on a sales counter. I became number one salesman in that department. Then I went to another sales counter, became number one salesman of that department. So things started really motivating me, and I got excited and they were starting to recognize me, the VP of sales. Well, the next thing you know, they started investing in me. So they put me in time management course. And I spent 2 days understanding what time meant, blocking out there was an 8-hour day, 15-minute increments. Okay. And understanding how to do that. Because before you think about it, I was just on a retail floor. I'd go from one place to another, taking care of things. Well, that changed. All of a sudden, I was understanding what time was. And so even to this day, 42 years later, I still use that system of a day timer, except now, of course, it's digital. And it just makes me like I sit in the sauna for 11 minutes. I structure my day every day. I verify what I'm doing. Those things really were impactful to me. And again, just because one guy took a little bit of time and smiled and knew my name. So then they put me through American Management Association. I learned how to do conflict resolution. I understood what it meant to deal with someone. Someone would ask you a question, you'd respond back with the question, you would turn around and then give them the answer. So that was understanding that, and it just helped me with managing and understanding people. So then I move on from that, and I ultimately go to work in a manufacturing facility that I end up running the division of. And I applied this American management type style with employees, and we would have employee lunches in the department. And we started doing jalapeno contests, and people started getting exciting about it. So I would take a 1 gallon can of jalapenos and open them up, spread them out on a table, 20 or 15 in front of each guy, and they would have jalapeno contest. And whoever won got $50. So it was like a big deal. They'd be sweating in water and it was crazy. But what happened was that became part of the culture of the company. So the window department, the door department, the lumber department started doing this throughout the company. So I really started realizing how important it was just to continue to manage people. And then I move on to another manufacturing facility and I do the same thing. Well, during this process, I'm working for this company. We get sold by to a private equity group, and I hated it. I was just really struggling. And again, I always kept having this dream of wanting to be an owner of a company, a founder, right? And so I ended up looking around, checking things out. Well, there's a manufacturing company. The guy's father had died and he closed it down. Well, he was willing to talk to me. So I spoke to him and I said, "Hey, I would really be interested in doing this." He said, "Fantastic. I'm willing to talk to you." So I went out, built a business plan, and needed $125,000. That's all I needed. Now, this was 1999 when I'm doing this. And so I doubled that number to 250, right? So so I knew I had more than enough money. What could go wrong, right? So match made in heaven. He would owner finance. He's a bank. So he is people that don't understand what owner finance is. That guy determined the price. He determined the interest rate, and $14,800 I gave him that I got from another guy, and I went into debt for $1.5 million in one day. And that was my start of that because I just realized my entire life I'd made all this money for these other people, and it was time for Larry Dix to jump out and see what he could do. So I get into this thing and nothing can go wrong, right? 6 months in, guess what? I'm freaking broke. I have no money. I don't even know how I'm going to make payroll. And at this point, I've got like 15 employees. So I call my wife and say, "Hey, guess what? You're working for Apex." She goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "We got to figure out how to do payroll." When? Friday. So we jumped in it, got on it, and we figured it out. And so I hired two sales guys. One guy sold a job for $35,000 that week, and I got a check for 35 grand. And so I went through this entire, process, ultimately surviving it, and things became quite great at that point for us. And we built from that cash flow, we've been able to build multiple business. We own tons of real estate now, and we're cattle farmers. So we raise beef cattle because, grass-fed beef now is the big thing. And so we just kind of parlayed all of that into that. And so just understand think about it like this. You take a kid that barely graduates high school, 142 out of 147. He builds a career from one man, took time to smile to give me an opportunity and gave me
Mhm.
the, I use the word empathy because that's something that I truly believe is you need to be able to communicate with the person pushing the cart through the retail floor to the CEO of a company. And that I built all of this just structure through my life through learning that one man taking that time. So he gave me a smile, taught me empathy. I learned time management. Then I became, with the American Management Association, it gave me that. And then is I forgot to talk about this one part. So the during this time of Apex, when I told you I ran out of money, well, I had to end up meeting with I ended up calling people and telling them I couldn't pay them. So I called Jack Leachman and I said, he's my lumber guy. That's a guy about 100 grand at the time. And he ended up answering the phone. And I talked to him. I said, Jack, this is Larry Dix. He said, yes, sir. I told him my story. I said, I'm not going to be able to pay you on Friday. He goes, what do you mean you're not going to be able to pay me on Friday? So I ended up, he gets up, puts me on hold and says, hold on a second. And he comes back online and goes, I want you to come up here and talk to me and my dad. Can you come up tomorrow? I said, yes, sir, I can. So I went up there. So I get in their office. And I'm sitting there, Mr. Leachman, he's Mr. Leachman. This is not Jack, this is Mr. And you didn't even know it. I didn't know his first name. He was a World War II vet, had been,
Mhm.
a depression baby, and he ultimately is a hard ass. I mean, this guy is just freaking rigid. So you're all at attention. Well, they sit on the other side of the desk. There's me on this side. I swear they cut the freaking legs off these chairs. I was like 4 inches down below the desk. There's these two guys. They ended up sitting there staring at me and they want my story. So I tell them my story. Mr. Leachman stands up, reaches out his hand. He said, Larry, we're going to do business with you. He goes, in my entire career, you're the first guy that's ever called and told me he couldn't pay me. And he goes, we're going to do business. So 25 years later, I am still dealing with the Leachman family selling lumber.
Mm.
So I did kind of get out of that, but so the bottom line is a man smiled. He taught me time management. They taught me how to manage people. And ultimately, they gave me the integrity and the honesty to do what's right. And I ultimately trademarked do what's right. And that brings a smile to my face every time. So think about that all encompass one man at when I was
Mhm.
18 years old, had no idea, smiled at me, knew my name. And so
Mhm.
what I'm telling you is if you can do that, go through life. If you're going to run a business, just smile. It's going to be so much better and just enjoy it because that one man did that. And then you too can ultimately be a 61-year-old overnight success. Thank you.
That is awesome. There is so much there. There's an hour's worth of material in a little over 10 minutes. That was great. I identified with several things, but I've got a couple questions. So
Yeah.
the jalapenos and the grass-fed beef. So where are you located in the country?
I live in Virginia, just south of Fredericksburg, Virginia. I have a
And
186-acre
jalapenos?
farm.
Now, I'm in Phoenix, so jalapenos works. Matter of fact, I had a jalapeno margarita at happy hour.
Hey, perfect. If I'd have done that, I wouldn't be up right now. It's 3 o'clock in the
you,
morning.
and I hope I mean, there was so much there, but one of the things that I really got out of it, and I've actually had this experience on both ends, to where, where that one man just, he recognized you.
Yeah.
Also, we're talking this is the keep smiling,
Yeah.
and shift happens, right? I love that shift happens. Think about this. We never know where someone's life is at,
Nope.
and we can empower them or we can help bring them down. And I don't want to get melodramatic, but there's sometimes where somebody's on the verge of just it being done, and we don't know that we could it was that one random act of kindness that kept
Absolutely.
them going another day, and then they later propelled that to change many people's lives. So I love the jalapenos and the grass fed, but that one person taking the time out, and then you also said something too that I think people could get a lot out of, and it was about your time and being diligent with your time, because how many of us go through the day and then what all did I not get done? You're very intentional. You're very
Yeah,
intentional.
discipline. It creates discipline. You start your day. Um, you know, I work out every day. I go through a very confined structure. As a matter of fact, when I got up at 2 o'clock this morning, I had to not follow my structure because I still got to go back to follow it, right? And it just, and like I said, 11 minutes in the sauna. I structure it because it's forcing my brain to think that way. I work out 7 days a week so that it sets the day, it sets the mark. It says, hey, the harder the workout, the easier the day. And you talk about that one thing. I look and I can go through story after story where there were opportunities for people to beat me down, but I could use that as either I could be defeated or I could be inspired. And I always tried to be inspired. And that's where I
Mhm.
encourage people to try to take that and turn it around and say, I will never let that happen again. Or I will never, be in that situation again, and use that. And it just builds discipline, muscle memory, and you stick with it and it works. I mean, I'm not doing anything that you can't get, there's 100 books that you can read about that tell
Right.
you that. And I wrote a book, Born or Made. It's a best-selling book. It's called Born or Made: Fear is a Liar and Defeat is Overrated. And it just talks about the stories, and only a few of them because you can only tell so many. And it just talks about how there were times I was defeated, but I chose to make that inspired.
So we've got to wrap up here, but
Yeah.
you've got so much wisdom, and you're I got a beautiful smile and a beautiful hairdo.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
so, what we need to do um, is how not what we need to. How can people get connected with you? How can they find you? How can they get more inspired by you? You've got a great message. Before I turn this over with Dakota.
So it's real simple. It's bornormadepodcast.com. There's also my name, Larry G. Dix II, which is a new website coming out next week. You'll be able to reach out to me. We've got lots of opportunity. On there, you can get my phone number. I won't give it out over this, but I'm willing to talk to anybody, and I don't cost people money. I just want to be able to inspire other people and help entrepreneurs all over the world be able to build a business and be successful.
Well, thank you, brother, and we'll have to get together for some jalapenos sometime.
Let's do it,
But
Dina.
yeah, fantastic. So yeah, there we go, bro. There we go. And we're gonna bring somebody on with some hair, but he's an amazing guy. So we're gonna bring Dakota in here now. Dakota, I think you're still muted though, brother.
I think I got to show
Dakota.
off this hair just a little bit. I got to
Oh
show off
my
this hair
God.
just a
Holy
little bit
cow.
because
Hey, hey,
You could give
everybody's been
that to me
promoting
and
the
Dina.
bald.
Yeah, we'd have
but
you give that to us. You'd still have
I
we'd
tell
still
you
have
what
extra.
though,